r/AskReddit. What's the most disturbing dream you've ever had? My own funeral with my 2 little girls crying over my casket. I quit my chewing tobacco addiction that morning and haven't had a dip since. Backstory. My mom OD'd just after I turned 7. The night after she died, I had a dream where I walked into my parents' room to say goodnight. My mom was laying in bed under the covers. All I could see was her arms and shoulders sticking out of the covers. I say mom, and hear back down here. I look down and see my mom's severed head, eyes open, perfectly functioning, asking me to put her head back on her body. 18 years later and I can still recall the exact image I saw when I looked down in the dream. Oh duck no. First comment in. I'm out. Victory hand. That is super rough. How does a 7-year-old even process loss like that? I was a teenager when I lost a parent, and I still had troubled dreams. I was 18 when my dad died, after a drawn-out stay in the hospital with a ton of life-prolonging measures. Afterwards I felt guilty about putting his body through all that for nothing. Soon after he died, I had a dream that he had come home but was still mostly comatose and in bed all the time. I spent time with him after school every day, did my homework there and ate lunch with him, etc. One day, several months after he came home, I was tired so I crawled in next to him to take a nap. When I woke up after the nap, I reached over to hold his hand, and it came off. I jumped out of bed and saw that he was almost entirely decomposed. With horror, I remembered that he had died right after he got home. I had been in a psychotic state. I had a vivid flashback scene of me taking care of him, feeding him, bathing him and changing the sheets, doing my homework and even sleeping next to him, all while he was a corpse, getting progressively more decomposed, for months and months. I was at school and for some reason my finger started going numb, and it wouldn't return to its normal state, so I went home and I woke up the next day with it black. Then it continued getting worse until I had a black arm up until my elbow, and for some reason I had to pretend it wasn't rotting, so I just covered it. And just before I woke up I stood up from my cafeteria table and it cracked and made a splat sound onto the table as it fell. For like half a second I forgot I was reading about dreams and thought this actually happened. Me too. Only this one. For some reason. Are you Jorah Mormont? This recurring nightmare used to terrify me as a child, and I was always more afraid of the texture that the dream took on near the end, and I've never been able to explain it. Bear with me though. It always started the same and was always very short. I'd be running flat out through a snowy, dead and sparse forest along with other people. I don't see these people but I can hear twigs cracking under their feet and the rustle of leaves as we move in absolute blind panic, and I know I'm running for my life. Just not what I'm running from. Suddenly I get to clearing or a lake, look up towards the horizon, and a split second later it all turns bright white. Everything in sight withers and shrivels up and the air takes on that texture. Everything is rough and smooth at the same time. Hot and cold, thick and thin. I'd then wake up sweating and whimpering. My hairs are standing on end typing it out right now. I was around 7 years old when I first had this dream and was far too young to understand what this might parallel in real life. Being older, I also now realize that what child me thought was a snowy landscape was actually ash, covering the ground and in the air. Weird, I know. Edit. I can't believe how many people are describing this exact same feeling, even with different dream content. I'm not the weird one. You all are. There must be something at work in the brain here. No idea what though. Oh, that's absolutely terrifying. I love it. Had this weird pain on my left leg, but couldn't roll up my pants. As the day went on the pain got worse and worse. Finally I got home, rolled up my pants leg and there was a giant centipede latched on. Have a fear of centipede to this day. My friend, actually same one who featured in the dream I posted here, calls centipedes the devil's shoelaces. My anatomy teacher called maggots disco rice and it forever changed how I see them. JustPigeon.com link. Learning how much housefly eggs look like rice forever changed how I see rice. Instead, I had a dream where I was laying in bed and my door flies open and these giant grey aliens run in and scream into my face the words "We are human." The rip opened my jaw and I woke up. I'm sorry but that sounds hilarious. Zyke sacks. We need to keep our human cover. What is our next move? We run into that human's room and rip his jaw off. Ah, yes. But will that be enough? Good point. Let's make sure we let him know we're human as we do it. Right. Should we calmly inform him? Number. And I'm new in town. Well, at least they weren't aliens. Could you imagine? Good thing they cleared that up immediately. That is very intense and escalated pretty quickly. AI Mayo. Oh my god. This was the day after my twins' first birthday and like 3 days after their mother had agreed to marry me. In my dream we were burying them, my kids. I was crying and I kept thinking that I saw my parents. But it just kept being people who looked vaguely like them. When my fiancé threw the last bit of dirt over them, I became furious with her. Then she got mad at me for getting mad at her. So she started yelling at me. I started hitting her, but I had like 6 fists. And she still just had 2. So I was hitting her and she could not defend herself at all. In my dream I was hitting her for hours and hours. And eventually she just ducking slumped over and died. So I decided to bury her next to our children. Just as I was about to throw the last bit of dirt over her, her eyes opened again. And they were my mother's eyes. And I saw the face of my father reflected back in them. So ducking glad I woke up at that point. Why is it that shocking thoughts like this come at the happiest time of your life? Maybe it's similar to intrusive thoughts. I've read that these sorts of moments are a sort of test to our brain's sense of right and wrong morality. Maybe our brain creates these moments just because we know we'll be outraged or shocked scared by them, and it's a reminder we would never do something like that. Psychopathy and sociopathy tend to be the brain's failure to appeal to a moral balance when giving these thoughts and instead encourages the behavior. Holy duck. This seems like all your deepest fears culminated into one hellish scene. I had this really profound dream where everyone was in a dim, candlelit mall and this banker was killing people, and then making people sign their lives away in the form of a loan in order for people to get back their loved ones he had killed. I was following people around and watching all this happen, but nobody could see me. Every time he signed another life away, a candle would go out and it would get a little dimmer and it was already pretty dark inside. I got to watch 3 people come back from the dead, but they were different and disinterested with life. One was just an infant who obviously couldn't speak, but it didn't cry or make any noises. Another was a very old woman wrapped in a shawl, sitting in a rocking chair who just gently rocked back and forth with a 1,000-yard stare. The final was a young girl, who was sitting in the middle of the mall staring off in the distance. I sit down next to her and I asked her what it's like to die. She said it's not too bad to die. In fact, you don't miss living until you come back to life. And when you're living, you wish you wouldn't die until you do. And then the most ducked up thing happened. She said it's okay to stay dead. You're not better off, but that's not a bad thing. And then I realized that only I could see these people, and everyone was just shambling around us like they were zombies, unaware of death, unaware of us, and miserable to their existence. Woke up with a few tears. Holy fuckingshit. Ship, that would make a pretty good short horror film. This could be a ducking novel. I once had a dream where I was running from an erupting volcano. I had to climb a big wall and was scared because I couldn't carry my dogs. I also had a dream where I was being chased by giant walking hot dogs who wanted to eat me. More details on the hot dogs please. Okay, giant hot dogs twice as big as me, running after me screaming they were hungry, holding a knife and a fork in their tiny arms. I was running for my life and it was really scary. I'm sorry for your trauma, but I'm laughing so hard right now. Thank you. I couldn't eat hot dogs for a while, but now I'm fine. When I was a kid I had this dream I was walking down the street with my grandfather. We were walking past a cemetery. In the cemetery I spotted this one man standing directly in front of a gravestone, dressed in a suit and black tie, like the suit they bury a man in. He was just staring blankly ahead. I asked my grandfather what's that man doing? He answered that's his grave. He's standing guard. I started to feel scared so I tried to quicken my pace. I looked back over at the cemetery and there were more people in the graveyard. Each person was standing over an individual grave, all of them dressed in black burial clothes. Some were men, some were women, some were kids. I turned to my grandfather and asked, "And who are all those people?" "They live here. Those are their graves," he replied. By now I was scared shitless. I started to walk faster. I turned to check to see if my grandfather was keeping pace with me. He wasn't there. I looked around for him. He was standing with the other people, next to a grave of his own. I woke up in a cold sweat at this point. This is my hole. It was made for me. You stop that. When a guy with this username asks you to stop, you realize something is really wrong with you. Well, as a participant of BDSM and BDSM related activities, I take pride in upholding the 3 tenets of BDSM, which are safe, sane, and consensual, and that sure as shit isn't sane. I had this dream where I killed myself. The weirdest part was I didn't wake up afterwards. I just stayed a spectator. Don't worry, you'll respawn in the next round. I had this with a zombie dream. Went from feeling my stomach being ripped out and eaten to hovering above the group of zombies and selecting an infected type A Left 4 Dead 2 multiplayer. Weird shit. I used to play Counter-Strike lots during summer break, and at one point I had a dream that I was playing. It's sad when you still are getting wrecked by hackers in your dreams, haha. I still have dreams of playing StarCraft 2. Happened to me too. I stayed in a dark void for what felt like several minutes, and the realization dawned on me that I had died, so I waited for my consciousness to fade away or to go to heaven or hell. Only, nothing happened. I stayed in that dark void, unable to hear, feel, breathe, or do anything for hours, waiting for something to happen, and my panic slowly expanding at the thought that I'd spend the rest of eternity conscious and unable to do anything ever again. I have lots of strange dreams. This one always stuck out to me, so here is how it went. I wake up in the morning and go through my routine. I have a typical normal day. I go to school, meet up with my friends. Just a nothing special kind of day. I suddenly snap out of it and realize I'm just dreaming. So it's morning now, and I begin to get ready for my day. I begin to notice that everything is happening eerily similar to my dream the night before. By the middle end of the day, I'm sort of freaking out, and everyone is asking me what's wrong. I explain what's happening, and I begin to tell people what's going to happen next. Eventually everyone believes me. We're trying to figure out what's going on. That's sort of where the dream kind of gets blurry. Finally snap out of it, and wake up in my bed. It's still dark out. I sit up and realize I just had a weird, unsettling dream. As I'm coming to terms with that, I wake up for real, I hope. That last part of the dream, sitting there in my bed believing I was actually awake, was what was really disturbing to me. This kind of dream that feels so realistic, especially because you keep waking up from it within the dream, is so creepy. It always makes me question reality and my sanity. LOL. I've posted this in a similar thread, but I once had a series of pretty messed up nightmares over a period of about a week or so. I dreamt that I was walking outside barefoot and I stepped on a nest of earthworms which immediately and painfully burrowed into my foot and started crawling up my leg under my skin. I dreamt that I helplessly watched my sister being dissolved live in a pool of bubbling acid, after I was able to save a bunch of strangers from the same fate. I dreamt that I was cleaning the attic and a board from the ceiling came crashing down and a wave of spiders fell on me. I couldn't move my feet to get away, so I started frantically brushing them away. But every time I did, more would pour down from the ceiling. So I was just stuck in this massive pile of skittering spiders on every inch of my body. I dreamt that I was fighting for my life against a crocodile in the jungle while a bunch of villagers watched without helping. I managed to push the crocodile off the cliff, and after hearing the bone-crunching thud of it hitting the bottom, I peered over the cliff and it wasn't a crocodile. It was a child. I dreamt that my real-life nephew, who nearly died when he was born, and spent 3 months in NICU, had actually been stillborn, but everyone refused to acknowledge it and they were queuing over and holding this dead baby and I was grieving alone. I will never forget that week or that series of ducked up nightmares. My house burned down. Everyone inside dies, because my dad didn't put out a cigarette properly. I was only 6 when I had that dream. When I told my dad about it in the morning, he quit smoking forever. Good for him. Sometimes I believe we have certain dreams for a reason. A girl came up to me on my first day at my new school. She pulled out a Chinese takeaway container with like raw chicken and said she wanted me to have it. Turned out it was her labia and her dad circumcised her. Noped out of that dream. What the duck? I used to have a dream that I had to fulfill an impossible task, kinda like the story in Greek mythology where, forget his name, had to run a race. But he could only run half the remaining distance, so for instance the race is 400 feet, he would have to run 200, then 100, then 50, then 25 on and on to mathematically it's impossible for him to finish the race, ever. I would have a dream with a similar task but my family members lived would be a stake and I could hear them say goodbye one by one as I couldn't finish the task. Achilles. And it wasn't a story so much as just a philosophical question about how distance worked. I appreciate the information. I didn't recall the details because I learned this from a Vsauce video. Lumfeo. Hey Vsauce, Michael here. Where are your fingers? Lem, go get them. You wait here. I once dreamt my mother and I were getting married for tax reasons. We had the wedding all set up and one of the guests said to me, "This is just wrong." Then we realized it really was wrong and cancelled it and returned the gifts. I woke up going, what the hell was that? For tax reasons sounds like an acceptable answer for any unexcusable behavior. I once dreamed that I had a terrible night's sleep, tossing and turning for hours. But in fact I had slept great. The feeling I had in the morning was really weird, like my mind wanted to be exhausted but couldn't manage it. As someone who sleeps like 4 hours a night I understand the feeling. I'm like, was I asleep just then, or dreaming it? Being raped by my grandfather multiple times in front of everyone, and nobody noticing. That'll do it. It's the one I remembered when this question was posted. Another was where I was the only adult. I was a teenager, helping hide small children from gunmen invading the orphanage. One of the children got found and was dragged to the hallway to be gang raped to death on a table. I can't do anything because I still had to protect the other children. This guy wins. But at what cost? After reading this comment and your original, I wish you're trolling, mate. If you have sincerely experienced these things, you probably have some terrible childhood trauma that you need to recover from, because both the dream involves helpless children being subjected to cruelty. I read in your other comment that you're recovering from suicide attempt. Are you getting any therapy? Hope you are, man. I had a dream where I had a penis. I'm a straight girl, and I ducked my sister. WTF mind? Once I had a dream that I had a 3-foot long penis that was bright colored patterns and folded up like one of those Chinese lanterns. I was in a stall in the school bathroom and I accidentally let it go and it reached the floor and under the stall divider. And I was so scared that another girl would see my pink and green checkered accordion beak under the stall door. Context: I was a 10-year-old naive girl who had just seen a horse with an erection for the first time. It scared me. I'm a dude and dreamed once that I had a coke on my forehead and cokes on my shoulders. Seems pretty weird, but hey, it's probably someone's fetish, so I try not to laugh at it. I have a recurring dream where I am kidnapped and kept prisoner by the same man. It is always the same man each time I have the dream. Some details change a bit concerning what he does to me, but only minor things, such as he always force feeds me horrible things. The horrible things are not always the same though. He always forces his dog, which is usually a Doberman or Rottweiler, to guard and attack me. I'm sexually abused by him, but the extent to which it happens differs. My family and friends always know what is happening, but they almost never do anything to help, and when they do, they die or are tormented with me. It is a ducked up dream and I always wake up very upset. I have had this dream since I was a preteen.